Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. This week, a jury in Tallahassee found that Republican State Representative Fabian Basabe sexually harassed two of his male staffers and committed battery against both of them. The jury also found Basabe defamed one of those staffers as well as that young man's mother on social media. Basabe, who represents a district that stretches from Miami Beach to Aventura, was ordered by the jury to pay the young men $450,000. Now, the sordid life of Fabian Basabe is one we first began covering on this show 3 years ago. A former reality TV star, Basabe was best known for his boorish and obnoxious behavior around South Beach. But after marrying the heiress of a lingerie fortune, Basabe used his wealth to get elected to the Florida House in 2022. Back in 2023, we were the first to report on the allegations of sexual harassment and physical abuse Basabe inflicted on his young male staffers. But this week, we heard from those men directly when they took the stand. They both described crude and repeated sexual overtures made by Basabe. Here is Basabe's former legislative aide, Nicholas Frivola, describing an incident that took place at North Beach Elementary as Frivola and Basabe were standing in the back of a classroom during career day.
And I would like for you to tell the jury what he did, what he said and what he did.
He whispered in my ear, "I want all of that butt," and proceeded to slap my buttocks.
Frivola then demonstrated for the jury what Basabe did to him. Frivola said Basabe showed a perverse interest in his sex life. And in a scene more fitting for the Real Housewives of New Jersey than the Florida Capitol, Frivola said Basabe unexpectedly assaulted him at a legislative reception following Ron DeSantis' 2023 inauguration.
And then Mr. Basabe points at Karis and goes, "Hey, isn't that the girl you slept with and went home with a couple weeks ago?" I then turned to Mr. Basabe and said, "No, it's not her." And then he goes, "Oh, so you're cheating on her?"
He slapped you?
He slapped me with his right hand across my face.
How did this make you feel?
Humiliated and embarrassed.
Basabe's other victim was Jacob Cutbirth, an intern in Basabe's office. One evening, Basabe had too much to drink, and Cutbirth was asked to drive Basabe home. He described how Basabe then came on to him.
I was driving on the left side because I was in the driver's seat. He was in the passenger seat, and started off with him getting his face right close to my neck and whispering in my ear. He put his hand on my thigh, and he made comments about sex with men.
Cutbirth, who is not gay, said Basabe tried to kiss him that night, and he had to push him away. He said when they were in the Capitol, Basabe instructed him to flirt with him in the office because apparently it made Basabe feel special. Cutbirth said Basabe showed him a picture of a naked man that Basabe kept on his phone and that the lawmaker kept telling him he should forget his fiancée and start having sex with men.
This is when Representative Basabe was asking me about my penis size. He asked me again also about, he showed some real concerns about engagement with my wife. And that's where the sports comment got brought back in as well, saying that there's less emotions involved when men have sex with other men, and that men have higher sex drives. And he also admitted that he was a bottom and was asking my preference of where I would lay in a heterosexual relationship.
One of the stranger aspects of the trial was Basabe's decision to get rid of his attorneys and represent himself. And trust me when I say it did not go well. When he was confused about a point of law, you could see him scrolling on his phone using ChatGPT looking for answers.
I'm kind of freaking out right now. So since the jury's out, can I just have 5 minutes to catch my breath, go to the restroom, wash my face?
Yeah, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. With that, the court will be in recess for 10 minutes.
Stuff like that happened throughout the trial, but even the judge had his limits, and Basabe was repeatedly admonished for bringing up issues the judge had told him were off limits.
If an attorney had done half of what you have done, they would have been sanctioned, sir. You don't get a pass because you chose to represent yourself. You don't get to continue to violate court rules because you didn't go to law school.
In the end, the jury took less than 2 hours to rule against Basabe and award the $450,000 to Frivola and Cutbirth. After the verdict was announced, the two young men and their attorneys hugged and broke down in tears. Afterwards, I spoke to attorney Cindy Myers, who has represented the two young men from the beginning of this case. What does this verdict represent to you? What does this verdict mean by the jury?
It's just justice achieved. It's been a long and arduous road. The jury believed my clients. They heard their testimony. It was under oath in front of, the jury sitting there listening to all of this in one comprehensive hearing, trial. And then Mr. Basabe had the opportunity to get on the stand and say his piece. And they believed Mr. Favola, Mr. Cutbirth, and Janet Favola. So, I can't even put into words, they feel insufficient, inadequate. The relief of being believed, being victims, you go through the situation, right, the first time, and you're victimized through that. And then they were re-victimized by the sham investigations, not just one, but two. So then they had to suffer through that. And so then they're re-victimized again. But I always had faith that if we could just get into the courtroom and before a judge and a jury, that the truth was going to be seen very clearly. And that is exactly what happened. And I am so grateful to this jury and to this judge.
The decision by him to represent himself just seemed to be the height of arrogance. The idea that he could simply go in and, as he has always tried to do, lie and bluster and misrepresent and charm and discount what others say and get people to believe him because he's the state representative, he's the big man, he's the elected official. And who are they? Who are they? He said they're losers. He attacked them, even on the witness stand, which was crazy to me. It was just a level of arrogance that I think that the jury was able to understand and see for themselves. And I think that did him in as much as anything.
Once again, you've hit the nail on the head, Jim. You really have. So I will also note that in the Allen Norton and Blue investigative notes, there was a page in there that Carolina Amnesty had reported to the investigators that she had had a conversation with him, and Mr. Basabe had said to her, nobody's going to believe them. Look at who I am. Look at what I'm doing. And basically, a word that he likes to use, he didn't actually say this, but he's used these words before. They're peasants. Nobody's going to believe them. They're going to believe me. It's right in the notes there. And that indeed is what he was counting on, that these young men were not going to be believed.
It's just that notion of everyone else is, that he could just bluster his way through this. And he thought he could pull one over on a jury, and jurors, as I said before, jurors can often be smarter than you realize. They have a way of getting to the truth.
I don't think in his head he saw it as blustering through. He has been pro se now, I guess it's more than a year. And he's come to hearings, he's filed things armed with ChatGPT. He was writing speeches there, off the cuff on some of these programs. He told the judge, he ran his speech, his closing argument through two programs. I think in his mind, no publicity is bad publicity because he's the center of attention. How can you be any more than the center of attention in a trial that is being live streamed?
You mentioned it earlier, the idea of finally being able to achieve what you believe is justice in a case like this, what Nick and Jacob and Jeanette wanted to sort of have some sort of sense of validation. Talk to me a little bit about why that was so important.
Well, as you can imagine, if you know you're speaking the truth about what happened, but you've got multiple authority figures who are continuing to silence you, and it really was not just a matter of looking the other way, it was taking an active involvement and covering up what Mr. Basabe was doing. You know, the Florida House took overt steps to help cover this up. So finally getting to the point where I know that we had crossed that threshold into the realm of justice achieved, it was a massive sense of relief. And I do this because I care about people. You know, I know some attorneys, it's their job and it's a way of making a living, but my heart is really invested in these cases. And I had to fight back tears that, you know, it was such a relief that we were finally here. And again, the fact that Mr. Favola was right behind me and I could hear him crying, tears of joy. They were tears of joy and they were relief.
You mentioned the Florida House did do an investigation, 2 investigations. We've reported about that, about how shoddy those investigations were. Both investigations turned out to be inconclusive. Representative Basabi repeatedly cited those investigations, saying he had been exonerated and cleared, lying outright about those investigations. In fact, even after the jury's verdict, he continues to lie about the nature of those investigations, claiming that he was exonerated and cleared by those investigations, and says that the only real problem why he lost this case was because he was foolish enough to represent himself. How do you respond to the statements that Representative Basabi has made since the trial?
Well, he did exactly as I predicted. I warned the clients that basically I expected him to start blaming himself for representing himself. And that's exactly what he has done. So that was totally foreseeable. You know, I can't make that man tell the truth. I get the impression from him that he operates in his own little entitled, malignant narcissist bubble, and that he's going to craft his reality to suit himself. I don't know what it takes to make somebody tell the truth. This is not an accusation anymore. This is fact.
Now, when this lawsuit against Basabi was first brought, he recorded a video message in which he vowed that if any of the allegations against him were proven, he would resign.
This video message is my verbal contract to you, not just you, but also my family, my friends, and my entire community. Should any of these allegations ever prove true against me at any point in the future, I would resign on the spot and be held accountable.
As we tape this Friday afternoon, he hasn't resigned and doesn't appear likely to, and he remains on the ballot for re-election this November. In the coming weeks, we'll have more on Fabian Basabe and how the Republican-controlled Florida House has worked hard to protect him